o'clock and time for the St. John Daily Word. I'm Pastor Ronald, Genaro. Today is our Bible study edition. We have several announcements for you, and then we will have a word of prayer and begin our Bible study. We want to remind you that this is our 7:30 a.m. in the fellowship hall that we're not holding it. We won't hold it on Thanksgiving. Us need to do exercise that day. Popsicle Ministry is Thursdays on the Schumacher property. That's when school is in session. And we hand out popsicles to the kids who are walking and any of the parents who pull over and stop, which sometimes there's quite a few with that. Wake Up Call is by Seedbed. This is there's a QR code on your screen, and Seedbed is our preferred devotional, although we do also provide the daily bread. But the Wake Up Call comes to your inbox on your email. You sign up for it, and you can either read it, listen to it, or watch it on YouTube now. And they are currently doing a series from the Gospels, and pretty soon they're going to start with John's Gospel, so you can jump on at the end and do John's Gospel if you've not done it yet up to this point. It's a great habit to get into. J.D. Wald is the editor, and right now he is doing this. He has said this every day for 40 days is kind of getting to him a little bit because he's got to have something filmed and recorded each and every day. But he writes these things out months in advance. Grief Share is a support group that meets every Thursday at 1 o'clock, although they only have a few more weeks left, and then they're going to take a break over the rest of November and December. We're talking about when they start back up again in the spring. But there's a registration fee of $20 just for the book. We have some wonderful folks leading that, and we're looking forward to them completing this session. It's about 10 people who are going through right now. Sometimes it's sometimes it's less than that come depending on the folks there, but it's very, very helpful. St. John 101 membership class is this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And so we will be in the education building, and we have some cookies, we'll have some coffee and some drinks, and we'd love to see you there. A big important one tomorrow, and that is from 8, we ask people to come between 8:15 and 8:30 if you're coming to work and help distribute mulch around the church. We're going to refresh all of the flower beds with red mulch, put that in. We have a few plants to plant as well, so if you have a green thumb, you might want to plant it. I am planning on going nowhere near the plants. I kill silk, so does my wife. We just are not good at that stuff. But I know how to spread mulch. And so we'll be doing that. We'll have some coffee and some donuts ready in the morning. Fellowship dinner, November 7th. That's this Friday at 5:30 in the Fellowship Hall. They're going to have hot dogs, $5 per person. They've got all kinds of other things with it. And they're going to play games. So sign up in the narthex, please, if you haven't already. But also just come if you haven't. You know, we'll make it work. Beatitudes and Brunch with Pastor Dorman. That has just a few more weeks left, but it's a 10-week series, and it began in September. It meets at 10:30 or right after the service if I go a little longer. I think they started a few minutes late this past week because we had communion. But that's in the Fellowship Hall. He's been working through. And then we're going to have another group. Bob, just stay on that a slide a second. After Beatitudes and Brunch, we have another one of our retired ministers who attends here. I had contemplated on leading a trip. We're doing the trip to Greece and Rome and all of those things. I was initially looking at going to Israel, and then October 7th happened, and I'm not yet ready, even though there's been some truce things going. There are some tours going on, but there are some areas that get a little close to some of those where some of the hostilities have been. So we're waiting on that, but Pastor Joe Anderson has been to Israel over 25 times. He is going to lead a study and show you some of the archaeology and some of so it's like going to Israel. And he's going to do that for the month of December and the month of January. So that's about an 7 or 8 week series that he's going to be doing. And I'm really looking forward to that. Office hours are Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And then Ladies First Friday Fellowship is this Friday at 10 a.m. in the Fellowship Hall. That is open to all the ladies and their friends. And Lisa Lovett, some of you may know her in the community. She runs a ministry called Choices. It deals with unexpected crisis pregnancies. And so she is going to come and share about their work that takes place. Operation Christmas Child, pre-printed boxes have been available in the narthex. You need to get those in by November 16th. We are putting out some additional materials to kind of help you. If you are having trouble filling your boxes, you can grab a few little toys and different things that we ordered from Oriental Trading. Bob, can you pan over and show them the box? Okay, it's over there. This is all the ones that have been prepaid for shipping. We have not as many that the church is going to wind up paying for, but we know that side will grow as well. I do not know the count on this at this time, but that's a lot of boxes. Church conference, Sunday, November 16th, 3 p.m. in the sanctuary. I apologize for all of you who watch football, and I'm one of those people who watches football, but we had to schedule this, and we have to give you notice about it. We elect our leaders for the coming terms, and then we also, there'll be a report. The trustees will report. Theirs will be a very brief report that'll be handed out. And then Pastor Parrish makes salary recommendations for myself. We're not approving a budget. The church council will be doing that in December, but you do have to, with your appointed pastor, talk about their salary each year. Parkway Food Ministry, we are always collecting food, but if you should go to the store and find some buy one, get one frees that are non-perishable peanut butter, canned goods, and cereal, it'd be a good thing to do right now with this government shutdown on it. And I know the Senate was supposed to vote again today, so I don't know what's happened. But because I'm dressed up because I had to be at the county commission earlier today. And but anyway, we know that all of the food ministries in our community and communities across the country are being taxed right now. They're not taxed, but there's a lot of use and heavy involvement with that. And so if you have the ability to do that, we would look forward to, partner with us to do that. We do know that also this week we're going to start, because we work with Parkway Food Ministry and have for 15 years, we're going to do the turkey roundup, and that's going to start this Sunday as well. We're going to collect for the next few Sundays to help purchase turkeys so that they can distribute those just before Thanksgiving. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you and we praise you for your goodness, your mercy, and your presence with us. We ask, O Lord, that you will bless this time together, that as we study your word, we will experience your presence. Speak to us and through us, we pray, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I forgot to tell you also, Susan Maddox, who we've been praying for, her granddaughter Bella, she called me yesterday, and Bella was released from the hospital, and she was doing very well, and she very much wanted all of us to know how grateful she is for our prayers. Susan and Bella. And I didn't know this. Susan told me something, that our church is one of the first groups that ever treated Bella just as a kid. And I really appreciated hearing that, and I had forgotten that, but apparently one of the years she got dressed up as an angel, and it was just, Bella, you want to be an angel? So she dressed up as an angel for the nativity scene. Then my wife just had her do that, and her sisters and brothers got her out there, and she was an angel, and other kids were in the creche, and apparently all of her teachers were just treated her with kid gloves before that. And then after that she says, listen, I was an angel at this church. You can let me do these other things. And that's just great. That's wonderful. That made me tear up. Okay, we have done chapters 34, 35. So now we're into 36 and starting. And a lot of this is going to go quickly because it's really a reaffirming what we've already heard in some cases, but it's describing further the work of preparing the tabernacle. Bezel and Olib and every skillful one to whom the Lord has given skill and understanding to know how to do any work in the construction of the sanctuary shall work in accordance with all that the Lord has commanded. All right, if you were to look on our walls, we've got some of the materials up on the walls and some of the things about our future site and site plans. We're working on all of that kind of stuff. Moses didn't have to go through any of that. I am so jealous of Moses. He did not have to deal with a county and a city and a water district and an architect. Because, why? Because God was the designer. God was the architect. And they were building something that was portable. Now, I will tell you, in my experience, I have a tent. I have a tent that I'm going to give to my son, my youngest son, because he enjoys camping. And he bought a tent, but it only holds like 3 people. I have a tent that holds like 6 or 8. I can't remember. I've put the tent up 3 times in 25 years. And I lost the instructions on how to put it up. So the last 2 times, I had to kind of remember fuzzily how to put it up and grab my son, who was an Eagle Scout, and say, what do I do? You put the poles, you run it on the outside. It's not metal, they're fiberglass poles, and you feed it all through. And that part I couldn't remember. Where did these poles go? And my son, he was laughing. He was like 12, and he was a weeblo, and he's like, here, Dad, I'll help you. And so my youngest one, when he heard we have a tent for like 6 or 8 people, he's like, yes, I will take that. So good, drive down, get it. We're not shipping it. Let me tell you how old this tent is. I bought it at Sears. I bought it at Sears 25 to 30 years ago. But, so this, they don't have to deal with all of that. But, who do they have to deal with? Well, they have the grumblers, right? But there's somebody else they have to deal with. Who's the architect? Who's the project manager? Yeah. Yeah, who's the perfectionist? God. And the expectation is that they do their best. I think I may have told you as a group, one time I made a comment. Some of you may have heard these kinds of comments or spoken these comments, and that is you're doing a task, you're putting something together, you're working on a project, you get to a place where you get frustrated or you think you're done, and these are the words, good enough for government work. Ooh, yes. Don't ever say that to your new father-in-law who worked for the government for 38 years. I made the mistake of doing that. And he's like, what do you mean? I worked my best for the government. And he did. I trust that he did. But that's an expression I grew up with in my family that I had to put away, and I never said it again in front of my father-in-law or my mother-in-law. And this is not for the government. This is not for themselves, although ultimately they will benefit by using it. It is to glorify God. And that's something that we also, in what we do, whether it's this building or the buildings we currently have or the future building that we build, it is always ultimately to the glory of God. Because for our case, a church is a building, but it is not the people of God. The church is people who worship God and who glorify God. And the expectation of us ought to be in the buildings we build and even of ourselves that we bring and give our best to the Lord. And that's what they're doing. Can you imagine being these 2 workmen who are called out by God and told to do this work? And they're gifted, they're craftsmen, they're artists and artisans, and God sees their work and calls them out. Now, Mike, you were in the military. Bob, you were in the military back there. Jim, were you in the military too? What do you know? And you were in the military? Or married to a military man? You were in the military. Coast Guard. Oh, good. When we recognize the Coast Guard, you get to stand this Sunday. You better. Every year when we do some of that stuff, sometimes we have a Coast Guard, a coastie, sometimes we don't. And I was almost in the Coast Guard. Almost. Almost in the Navy, almost in the Coast Guard. I was trying to get into the Coast Guard Academy. And I didn't, but somebody else did, and he copied off of me in physics class. My wife says I have to let it go. It's only 50 years. I'm working on it. But what do you learn in the military? Never volunteer. You wait to be called on. And that's what these guys are. They are called out by God. And Moses has to tell. So in a sense, they don't have a burning bush like Moses, but it's similar. Moses is called out by God to lead the people and to lead them from bondage to freedom. Now, these two individuals are being called upon to oversee the construction of a portable worship facility that is to be their best. So it's to be, the furnishings are to be top-notch, everything the best. I had a church, one of the first churches I had, years ago, a couple of churches before this. We had a room, well, they had a pattern that they did. It was, the person who started it, I think they were well-intentioned, but have you ever been to like in a service organization where you walk in and in the foyer they've got all these names up and it's remembering all of their members who have died? Well, they had that in the church, in the lobby. And we were running out of wall space and we got to paint. And what happened, we were getting ready to paint, and what happened is my sister and her husband and her two stepchildren came to visit, and they came to church that day. And so my nephew, who is a very devout Christian now, but he was a little kid, he looks at me and says, "Uncle Ron, what's all of that?" And I said, "Those are the names of all the people who are members of the church." Theologically, he is actually correct. You die to yourself. But he was like, wow. And so what we did is we took those off the wall, we repainted it, we did some other things. But I had this, they had a nursery in one room, and they had this other room, and they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And so what we did is we called that the memorial parlor. We put all of those things on the wall there, and then we recarpeted it, and we bought new furniture to go into it. And that's where, when I did a funeral, the family would be before the funeral started. Or they would paper over it. There was, I think there was glass there. They could change there and all those things. But when they got ready, the trustees were like, well, where are we going to buy the furniture? And what I did is I found two women who always looked nice when they came to church. Everything matched, and their spouses matched what they were supposed to, and we put them in charge of buying the furniture. And they spent more money than what we had allocated, but it worked, and it was good. And I don't know if they've ever replaced that furniture. My last church, we did a renovation, and it was beautiful. And not wanting to fight and argue about anything, we had a member of the church who had actually moved away. They just moved a town or two over. They transferred to another church. But they were an interior designer, and they came in and they told us what to do. That's how my last church wound up with not purple, but plum-colored carpeting, because it tied in all of the colors that were in stained glass windows, which was a dominant purple and gold and some other. They had had green for years, and they wanted to go back to green. They didn't do that. So they listened to what the interior designer, because there are people gifted who know what they're doing. Then there are people like me, and a lot more like me, where, does this go together? I'm not even sure about this. My wife wasn't there to tell me. Good, all right. So, verse 2. Moses then called Bezalel and Oholiab and every skillful one to whom the Lord had given skill, everyone whose heart was stirred to come do the work. And they received from Moses all the free will offerings that the Israelites had brought for doing the work on the sanctuary. They still kept bringing him free will offerings every morning, so that all the artisans who were doing every sort of task on the sanctuary came, each from the task being performed, and said to Moses, the people are bringing much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded us to do. I want that to repeat. Every preacher I've ever known has wanted that to repeat. So they brought the gifts. Moses had collected gifts. They brought it. The work began, and people are bringing more because they see what's going on and they want to be a part of that, and because God was moving their hearts to do that. We have seen that here in this church from time to time. I've seen it a lot, and I'm so proud of this congregation. This past Sunday on the altar rail, we said those would go to Jamaica for this Sunday and next Sunday. It was over $1,600 this past week, and I expect there to be that or more this week as well, because we want to help. And if you've watched the news, it's bad. It is just really bad, especially with where it directly hit. But I love that. The people were bringing much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded us to do. Whew. So Moses gave command, and word was proclaimed throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for what they had already brought was more than enough to do the work. There is a minister that I knew of, and he was a professor at Eastern Seminary, Eastern Baptist College. I think he taught some at the seminary, but I think he was at Eastern Baptist College, which is in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. And his name was Tony Campolo. And there are all kinds of stories about Tony Campolo, and he was just very, he was unique. He was an Italian Baptist. And, sort of like being an Italian Methodist. But there are more of us. I have friends who have Italian names. I always greet them with, somebody else's name ends in a vowel. Anyway, Tony Campolo had there was this story about him that he always cut it close getting to where he needed to go. And he also had a lack of a sense of direction sometimes. And so he made the right town. He just went to the wrong Baptist church to speak. And he got up, and he spoke, and he gave the message. He got up, gave the message, and the minister there said, I don't know why Brother Campolo was here, but I'm glad he gave a good message. He went, I'm in the wrong place. So then he had to go to the other church. And he got to the other church, and they were doing an offering. And they did an offering, and the offering came in. And then Tony Campolo, they counted it while he was speaking. And they came out and they said for him to announce. Well, it wasn't what they needed for the project. And he said, brothers and sisters, they've told me how much is needed. And the plates will be passed again. It's not enough. This was not that case. This is over. No more. Boy, would I love that. No more. But the opposite is what we usually experience, isn't it? We need more. We need more. Sometimes the church, the temple, the mosque is the last place where people give. Or we don't give our best. There's a story from Paul Harvey. Some of you remember who Paul Harvey is. The rest of the story, and it always appears around this time of the year because it was a story from the Butterball hotline. Someone called and said, I've had this turkey in my freezer for 10 years. Is it edible? Can we use it? So I didn't even know there was a Butterball helpline, but there is. And so they put the person who called on hold and said, hold on. They talked about it. They asked questions. They got back and they said, well, the wisdom is here. Yes, it is edible as long as it's not freezer burnt, but it might not taste very good. Oh, okay, that's what I needed to know. Well, would you like instructions on how to get rid of it? Oh, no, I'll just bring it to the church. At one time, parsonages in our previous denomination were furnished. The rules said all of the furniture that went in were supposed to be new furniture. And as my wife once remarked after we were married and we started living in a parsonage, I had matching drawers and chest of drawers and side and nightstands, and we haven't had one yet that matched. Or she pulled a drawer, she went to pull a drawer open and it came off in her hand, and I slid it out, I took everything out, laid it on the bed, and then I repaired it, and I looked at it and I said, I think Clark, who was our previous minister there, I think Clark must have fixed this one. That one looks older. I could tell all of the repairs that were in it. And when I saw Clark at a meeting, I said, hey, did you fix that drawer? Yeah, I fixed it a couple of times. I said, I saw the repairs. I did it too. So, verse 8. Any questions on 1 through 7 of chapter 36? All those with skill among the workers made the tabernacle with 10 curtains. They were made of fine twisted linen and blue and purple and crimson yarns. Blue, purple, crimson. Crimson is a red color, and they're all related. With cherubim skillfully worked into them. All right, so they had a pattern of cherubim. What's a cherubim? Well, we know what a cherubim is, right? It's an angel. It's an angel. It's an angelic being. How is that not in violation of not making any graven images, though?
Well, they were told to do it.
Exactly, because God said to go ahead and do this. He joined 5 curtains to one another, and the other 5 curtains he joined to one another. So they're panels, and they're being joined together. Like he made loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain of the first set. Likewise, he made them on the edge of the outermost curtain of the second set. He made 50 loops on the one curtain, and he made 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that was on the second set. The loops were opposite one another, and he made 50 clasps of gold and one whole. Together, in my eyes, looks like the curtain rings. Along those lines. Hopefully they held better than the rings that we buy at the store. These really cool looking decorative ones. My wife likes sailboat lessons. So we have this thing that's lighthouse, and it has a hook over forever. When somebody moves that curtain at 3 o'clock, you put it back up. That's why I know it worked better here, because these things are not to touch the ground. He also made curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. He made 11 curtains. The length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain were 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves. He made 50 loops on the edge of the outermost curtain of the one set, 50 loops on the other curtain. He made 50 clasps of bronze to join the tent together so that it might be one whole. And he made for the tent a covering of tanned ram skins and outer coverings of fine leather. So these are all things that are used that way. And what this is it's a top. Then he made the upright frames for the tabernacle of acacia wood. 10 cubits was the length of a frame, and 1.5 cubits the width of each frame. Each frame had 2 pegs for fitting together, and he did this for all of the frames of the tabernacle. The frames for the tabernacle he made in this way: 20 frames for the south side, and he made 40 bases of silver over the 20 frames, 2 bases under the first frame for its 2 pegs, and 2 bases under the next frame for its 2 pegs. For the second side of the tabernacle on the north side, he made 20 frames, and there are 40 bases of silver, 2 bases under the first frame, and two bases under the next frame. For the rear of the tabernacle, he made 6 frames. He made 2 frames for the corners of the tabernacle in the rear. They were separate beneath, but joined at the top at the first ring. He made 2 of them in this way for the 2 corners. There were 8 frames with their bases of silver, 16 bases under every frame, 2 bases. This is a lot. Now, you're also, so it's joined together with pegs. And that's stable. And if you know anything, like my grandmother was married 3 times. She buried 2 husbands. The third one buried her. The one, when she got married, she was in her late 60s when she married him, and she asked for my permission because I was the oldest grandchild. And I had to meet him and all of this other kind of stuff. And he told me that he was from Massachusetts, and he had owned a house that did not have 1 nail in it. I'm like, well, how was it held together? He said, pegs. I said, well, how old was the house? He said it was built in the 17th century. That's the 1600s. And I'm thinking, did it have a thatched roof? You know. But he said, and he said, because of its age and the weathering of the wood and its curing, he said you couldn't drive a nail into it because it had hardened and petrified, if you will. So it's doable, and if you've ever seen the Amish construct a barn, they use pegs. So it's still used today. Verse 30, any questions up through 30? I'm sorry, I'm having to read all this construction stuff too, but it's fitting since I was representing Habitat today. He made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the tabernacle at the rear westward. He made the middle bar to pass through from end to end, halfway up the frames, and he overlaid the frames with gold and made rings of gold for them to hold the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. He made the curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and fine twisted linen with cherubim skillfully worked into it. For he made 4 pillars of acacia and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks were of gold, and he cast for them 4 bases of silver. He also made a screen for the entrance to the tent of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and fine twisted linen embroidered with needlework, and its 5 pillars of their hooks. He overlaid their capitals and their bases with gold, but their 5 bases were of bronze. So this is the interior walls. Everything else up to this point was the exterior. Now he's putting it all in so it can be segregated into the various rooms that it needs to be. Any questions? It gets more ornate inside. But that's the way things work, isn't it? For most of us. The tabernacle, I'm gonna leave this for a moment and talk about the tabernacle for a second. When you go to Jerusalem, Barb, you've been there, I've been there, Sue has been there, anybody else been there? Okay. When you go there, It depends on which way you're coming, but every way you come, you go over a hill or a mountain, and then you look down into the valley because it's surrounded by valleys, and then you look up to Jerusalem. So, and it's on I think you would call it a mesa here, or a plateau, yeah, because it's up. That's what a mesa is too, I think. So, whenever you talk about going to Jerusalem, you go up to Jerusalem. It doesn't matter where you are, right? We talk, because we live in Florida, we're going up north because directionally on a map, we're headed north. And we go up, right? We all orient them. The way we orient maps in the West, up is north, down is south, left is west, right is east. That's the way we do it. But the way you do it in Israel, when you're talking about Jerusalem, you go up, no matter what direction you're coming from, because you have to go up mountains, down, and then up. Now, when you go now, you see the Dome of the Rock Mosque, and it's got gold on the top of it, and it's very brilliant. And if you stay on the Mount of Olives, there's a hotel there called the Seven Arches. Did any of you stay there? I got to stay there my second trip. That was where I most wanted. I got up and I watched sunrise, and I took pictures. It was beautiful. I don't even know where those pictures are, but I took them. I have them somewhere. But what's so beautiful is you see the sun and you see it hit the mosque, and even in bright daylight, you see the gold of that. If you ever see a picture of Jerusalem, you see that. The temple was like that too. It had gold on the roof. And from whatever direction you came from, it just sparkled. Not only that, the stones that were used for the temple was this white stone. It's a limestone native to the region that, do you remember, that all new construction in Jerusalem has to use that color because that's the city color. And our guide was kind of funny. He says, so where are you from? I said, Florida. What's the oldest city in Florida? I said, well, it's actually the oldest city in North America. And he said, what is it? I said, St. Augustine. When was it founded? I said, I believe it's 1512 or 1513. And he says, oh, that's new construction around here. We have buildings that are older than 500, 600 years. They're older than thousands of years. So, but the temple was so beautiful because you had all this white limestone that reflected, and then you had the gold that reflected. So this tabernacle is also going to be something that you're going to marvel when you see it. And that's part of the beauty of God. And God desiring in some way or sense that the creation for worship of his people or by his people has to reflect the grandeur of God. So what they're doing, this is not an easy thing. This is a big thing. But it is to reflect the grandness of God. Now, for some of us, I don't know about you, but I'm on my computer all the time. And my computer at home, my desktop computer at home, it's like every day it changes the background. It can be a little frustrating. And I guess there's a way to figure out how to save it. But I balance that out with, I see all these great places. And they're starting to repeat now, too. But, there's just some beautiful things on this earth. And there's a button I can click to find out where it is. And then I log in my mind. I might want to go see there sometime. The Northern Lights are really pretty, but I don't want to live where they happen. But, God is a God of beauty and of creation. And so they're creating these things and making these things glorifies God. All right. Any questions? All right. Let me see how far I'm going to get in today. We're going to finish up here pretty quick. I can get through this. I can get through this part today. Okay. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood. It was 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. This is the Ark of the Covenant. He overlaid it with pure gold inside and outside and made a molding of gold around it. He cast for it 4 rings of gold for its 4 feet, 2 rings on its one side and 2 rings on its other side. He made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, and he put the poles into the rings on the side of the ark to carry the ark. This was the responsibility of a specific family of the Levites. That eventually that's what would happen. They would be the only family that you had to be a descendant of that family to carry it. And they could only carry it by the poles. You never touched the ark. If you did, you died. There's a story about David moving the ark incorrectly. It was put on a cart. It wasn't being carried by the right people. And it started to slip off, and one of the people who was an attendant to that tried to catch it to keep it from hitting the ground, and he died. And David repented, found the right people, and they carried it the rest of the way. He made a mercy seat of pure gold, 2 cubits and a half was its length, and 1.5 cubits its height, its width. He made 2 cherubim of hammered gold at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. He made them 1 cherub at the one end and 1 cherub at the other end, of one piece with the mercy seat. He made the cherubim at its 2 ends. The cherubim spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings. They faced one another. The faces of the cherubim were turned toward the mercy seat. So what that is, it's a flat area in the middle. No one's going to sit on it. It's called the mercy seat. It means that God resides there to grant mercy. And then the wings face in and their faces face in. And you've probably seen pictures of this. And if you haven't, you can go see Raiders of the Lost Ark. They got it right. And actually it's in that one and it's in the last one, because if you recall in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I always thought this was funny, is that they took, or the next to last one of the Indiana Jones 5 movies. At the end of it, they crate it up and they mark it, and then they store it away. And then in the 4th movie, they're looking for something else. That's the one with aliens, and they knock it loose, and you see the cherubim because it moves it. But actually, as he's walking, the Indiana Jones character, they said, "Is this it?" He went, "No, that's Hebrew. I know about that one," and keeps going. I think they call them Easter eggs. But they did get it right because we have the descriptions. We have drawings of it. We know that. What we don't have is its location. Except there is a group that says they have it. Do you know where they are? In Africa, specifically in Ethiopia. It is at a church that is close to the public on an island, and only the bishop gets to go in and see it. But he assures everybody he's got it. And that's all we know. And the History Channel has done some examination, but they won't let anybody go in and see it. So there is no one outside of the priests who are in that specific order of ministers has ever seen it. It's kind of hard to verify whether something exists if there's no other concrete evidence of it. He also made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. What we had earlier were the instructions on how to make it. Now we're hearing that they made it, that they've done it. He overlaid it with pure gold and made a molding of gold around it. He made around it a rim of a handbreadth wide and made a molding of gold around the rim. He cast for it 4 rings of gold and fastened the rings to the 4 corners of its 4 legs. The rings that held the poles used for carrying the table were close to the rim. He made the poles of acacia wood to carry the table and overlaid them with gold, and he made the vessels of pure gold that were to be on the table, its plates and dishes for incense, and its bowls and flagrons from which to pour drink offerings. So they would pour the drink offering out. few weeks ago I preached on, and Paul had this reference to, I am being poured out as a libation. We think that he had this in mind, the drink offering that was poured out as an offering to God. I started just to chuckle. I was thinking for a second about Aaron's nowhere near this stuff, because remember, Aaron's way of trying to design and build something is to throw it in the fire and out it pops. That was his excuse with the golden calf. He's not mentioned in here at this point. And I just started to chuckle about thinking about that. All right, any question on the bread of the presence? This bread will show up, or the bread that is made for it, it will show up a couple of times. The only people who were to eat it would be the priests, and then it would be left out for God. But David, when he is fleeing an enemy, I think it's Saul, one of his times, he will go to the tabernacle and he will take the bread and eat it. Jesus will make reference to that when he is talking about the Sabbath and his disciples are being chastised and criticized for doing work. And what were they doing? Walking by the grain field, and they took their hand and they plucked some grain and they did this and then ate it because they were hungry. And Jesus says, man is made for the Sabbath, not Sabbath for the man. Because some people were just really adamant that you could not do those things. And Jesus is tilting it there and addressing what he considers a misunderstanding, at least we think. He also made the lampstand of pure gold. The base and the shaft of the lampstand were made of hammered work, and its cups, its calyxes, and its petals were of one piece with it. There were 6 branches going out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of the one side of it, and 3 branches out of the lampstand of the other side of it. 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals, and on one branch, and 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals on the other branch, so for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand. On the lampstand itself, there were 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyx and petals. There was a calyx of one piece with it under the first pair of branches, a calyx of one piece with it under the next pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the last pair of branches. Their calyxes and their branches were of one piece with it, the whole of it one hammered piece of pure gold. He made it 7 lamps and its snuffers and its trays of pure gold. He made it and all its utensils of a talent of pure gold. This is a lot of money of gold, a lot of gold. We think it looks something along the lines of like a menorah. This is a light that was to be lit, and it was to constantly be lit. The festival of Hanukkah, or the observance of Hanukkah, is a time during the intertestamental period where they did not have enough oil to burn for several days. They only had enough for a day or so, and the miracle of the lights was that it burned for the entire length of time until more oil could be gotten. They were under a siege, as it were. That has to do with the Maccabean revolt, where the Maccabees led Israel. Maccabee was a priest who had sons, 7 sons, I believe, who overthrew you'll love this one, the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucus was one of the 4 generals that Alexander the Great had, and Alexander had conquered almost all the world, and so when he died, he left no heirs, but on his deathbed, he said of his 4 generals, fight it out. And so what they decided to do is they started to go to war, but what they did is instead of fighting, they split it up into 4 different areas. And Seleucus had this area and Egypt and all of that. And so, or he had part of that. The Ptolemies had Egypt. I think I've told you before, Cleopatra was not Egyptian. She was a Ptolemaic princess, which means she was European, Greek, Macedonian. She's actually one of the few people who ruled the Egyptians who learned how to speak and read Egyptian. Very few did. But the Seleucid Empire had control of the Holy Land. Antiochus Epiphanes was the leader who defaced and defiled the temple and burned it to the ground, and that's when the ark disappeared. The Maccabean, their name means hammer, they had an uprising, and they led the uprising, and they beat the Seleucid Empire, which was some feat. And they had a period of a couple of hundred, about 200 years, that they had some freedom, that they were not ruled by anyone. And then they came to a point in time where they had no male heir to lead it. And so they went to this other empire and asked for help. And that delegation was, one of the leading people of it was this guy by the name of Herod. And his wife was actually the woman who was closest to lay claim to the Hasmonean throne, which was what it was called at that time. She was a Maccabean. And he was not, and he wasn't even really Jewish. He was Samaritan. He's an Idumean, which was one of the groups of the Samaritans. And but he, through all kinds of subterfuge and manipulation and political deals, wound up king. And it was Julius Caesar, Octavius, who became, what do you call him? Caesar, Augustus. He said, I would rather be Herod's pig rather than his son. Because the words, oddly, the word in Greek for son and pig is just one letter difference, and they sound alike. It may be something about males, way they keep their room, maybe. I don't know. I've wondered about that. But they're very similar words, and he was making a pun. Even puns are not unique to us. They were also in the ancient world. And so Augustus was saying, I'd rather be his pig than his kid, because he had, by all accounts, murdered 2 of his own sons, because he thought they were rivals for his throne. He murdered his favorite wife, Mariamne, who was the one who had the thing, because he thought she was plotting with the sons against him. Masada, which is a part of the trip that you take, and it's an extra add-on. We went to it. I went to it twice. Masada, which has a great story behind it, was one of several palaces that Herod had constructed. He'd only visited Masada once, and that was to see it and lay it out and to tell him where to put everything. They constructed it. He never went back. But he had created that because he feared Cleopatra and Mark Antony, who were rivals of Augustus. And the reason for that was Cleopatra used something in her cosmetics that could only be found in Israel, and he was afraid she was going to come and take over his country for that. So he had a series of escape palaces. That was one of them. Sorry. I didn't mean to go. Verse 25, he made the altar of incense of acacia wood, 1 cubit long and 1 cubit wide, and it was square, and it was 2 cubits high, and its horns were of one piece with it. He overlaid it with pure gold, its top and its sides all around, its horns, and he made for it a molding of gold all around, and made 2 golden rings for it under its molding on 2 opposite sides of it to hold the poles with which to carry it. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. He made the holy anointing oil also and the pure fragrant incense blended as by the perfumer. And we're going to stop there today. What happens is you have this family that will wind up moving all of it, but this They are part of the tribe of Levi, but each one will be assigned certain things that get done. In the book of Numbers, it talks about the wrappings. They use otter skin to wrap them when they're moving them and transporting them. That we're told that too. So you have all of this going on. It really is important stuff because you see this play out, and each piece plays a part in the worship of Yahweh. You will also have later on, when the temple is constructed, some of these pieces go over there and they're reused. Some of our stuff will be reused. Not a lot, but some of ours would. And every new thing we buy, we try to make it stuff that can go. Right, Mike? Like all the kitchen stuff's going. We know that. But, and more to be added to it. But, so they did all of that, but there will be these plates and things, utensils for the incense and all of that. One of the kings will show it all off. And the prophet will say to him, "You fool. Everything you showed to that friend, ally, that you wanted to impress, they're going to come and take it all from you." Now, he begs and prays, and they don't take it from him, but his descendants wind up having that to go through that. But these were the things that they were to be used in the worship, and they were supposed to stay there, and they weren't supposed to be carted out, hey, show off. But they did. Because what is human nature? Fallen, messed up, and we do things wrong, right? We don't even play games fairly with each other, or we crow over our adversaries. I remember being a kid, and when you made a touchdown, it didn't matter in high school, college, or football, you didn't celebrate because you just didn't, right? They threw a flag, and you got penalized for it. Now it's like there are whole routines that teams do. Makes no sense to me. My dad did live to see all of that. He probably enjoyed some of that. There were two sports my dad loved: football and championship wrestling from Florida. I just remember him cheering, and even I at 9 thought, this is fake. This is not real. It's all. And then it came to our high school or to our middle school. They did it in the gym there, and it was all scripted. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. Some of you who grew up or lived most of your life in Florida, you remember the guy who was the announcer, Gordon Soley from, yeah. Oh boy, Dusty Rhodes and all of those people. Yeah. My dad would cheer for that like it was real. And he wasn't a gullible person, but he was for that. And I forgot, there was one other one. Roller derby. I watched roller derby when they brought it back, but it wasn't the same with the inline skates and all that stuff. My wife taught school with a fellow teacher. She was an English teacher. Her mom was a roller derby queen and well known. and you're normal. She said, "Mom quit." She took breaks when she got pregnant. So, all right. So we're going to finish up. We will not meet the next 2 weeks. We will be off on the 11th. We'll be off on the 18th. We will meet the week of Thanksgiving, and I will finish the book of Exodus. Then for December, we will meet the first 3 Tuesdays in December, I think it is, and then just the Tuesday before Christmas Eve, we will not meet that day. We will be going nuts around here. And getting everything ready. And we hope for a really good turnout and good crowd. But I think what I'm going to do is each week I will look at and highlight. I will highlight the Matthew passage on the birth narrative. Then the next week the Luke narrative, and then I'm going to do John's gospel, which doesn't have a birth narrative, but it does talk about the effects of the birth narratives in that it talks about the incarnation. And so we'll look at all of those things. All right, let's close with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you. We praise you for your goodness, your mercy, and your peace. We pray that you be with us and be with the people of Jamaica. Watch over those, and we just pray the death toll does not continue to rise and that people will be able to get the aid that they need. We know something about hurricanes and the difficulties and the struggles, but we're not on an island. They are on an island, and so it's harder to get things in. And we just pray, oh God, that you will just watch over those people. We pray these things in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Yeah, I have a wedding on November 22nd, and the young lady is from Jamaica, and the concern is that her mom and sibling, her family, will be able to get out and come out. And I don't know that flights have resumed yet. I don't know. God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, God loves you. This church loves you, and I love you as your pastor. We'll see you later. Bye now.